We knew that big changes were coming to this Red Sox bullpen as guys came back from injury, and today we got our first answer to that question as to what decisions were going to be made. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and right now the Boston Red Sox have the 15th lowest ERA in Major League Baseball. They're sitting at 3.78, which is kind of dead middle of the pack, right? 15th out of 30 Major League teams. They're sort of a dead middle bullpen right now. However, if you take out the two highest ERA people in our bullpen, Ryan Brasier and Kaleb Ort, that number then drops to 2.77, which would hypothetically be the third best bullpen in Major League Baseball. And I know what you're thinking. Corbin, you can't just take out the two worst players on a team to make the team better, or can you? Like I said in the intro, the Red Sox have some pretty important decisions to make regarding this Red Sox bullpen because they have so many people coming back from injuries. The closest one to being activated is Chris Martin, and we got an answer as to who Chris Martin is going to replace in this Red Sox bullpen just last night. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the latest Red Sox roster move regarding this Red Sox bullpen. We're going to be talking about how it affects the team, how it's going to affect individual players, and what this means for the Red Sox going forward as more players come back from injuries. But before we get into that, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. The move we are talking about today happened a little bit later last night. Julian McWilliams was the first person to report it, and that is that the Red Sox have optioned Kaleb Ort to AAA Worcester in order to most likely make room for Chris Martin to be activated to this Major League club for today's game. Now, this move really shouldn't surprise a single person, right? Kaleb Ort was one of the worst performing arms in this Red Sox bullpen up until this date. In fact, before he was optioned, Kaleb Ort had a 7.30 ERA with a 6.28 FIP, meaning that he really wasn't getting too unlucky on the mound. He just simply was not executing his pitches very well. He also had a 1.784 whip, meaning that there was a lot of traffic on the base pass during his appearances, and he also had a 65 ERA plus, which puts him about 35% below league average production on the mound for a reliever. Kaleb Ort simply just could not get his footing under him this year. During spring training, he struggled really hard to keep the ball in the yard. Then coming into the regular season, kind of right out of the gate on opening day, he struggled, and he never really got his footing after that. There were about 9 days in the early days of this year where Kaleb Ort looked really good, but the biggest problem with Kaleb Ort, in my opinion, I think most people's opinions, is that it was never a consistency, right? He was never able to consistently be an effective reliever out of this Red Sox bullpen and consistently get guys out. At the end of the day, it was simply a consistency problem. Now, the big thing with Kaleb Ort is that on his own, he's not entirely an issue. And what I mean by that is every team kind of has one of these guys, the sort of last spot on the roster type reliever pitchers that comes in and sort of eats inning when you're losing by a ton or when you're winning by a ton, sort of that mop up role. The problem with Kaleb Ort in this bullpen is that you had two of those guys in the bullpen due to injuries, right? You had Ryan Brasier and you had Kaleb Ort, and what that was doing was it was causing guys like Kaleb Ort and Ryan Brasier to end up in situations that they probably shouldn't even be in the first place. Because of these injuries, you were seeing Kaleb Ort and Ryan Brasier in critical situations, in spots where you should have your critical relievers in, but again, due to the injuries in the bullpen early on this year, you were getting Kaleb Ort and Ryan Brasier, and you were seeing those ERAs tick up. We knew, the Red Sox knew, sort of everyone knew that at some point the Red Sox were going to have to make a decision between these two, especially as guys were coming back from injuries, to increase the production from this Red Sox bullpen. So in my opinion, I really don't think we're going to see Kaleb Ort anytime soon. I think they're going to let him sort of play it out in AAA Worcester. Maybe he finds something down there. So unless there's any like major injuries to the Red Sox bullpen going forward, I really don't see Kaleb Ort being a part of it. And the bright side with this move is it now allows the Red Sox to activate Chris Martin and put him back on this Major League roster, which could really do wonders for this Red Sox bullpen. Chris Martin was off to a fairly good start to begin his 2023 campaign. Now, he was only able to go 7 innings before going down with an injury, so the sample size is really small, but in those 7 innings before going down, Chris Martin had a 2.57 ERA, allowing just 2 earned runs in 7 innings on 8 hits, and he's currently sporting a 1.89 ERA plus, which is about 89% above league average production. However, there were some concerns with Chris Martin before he ended up on the IL, the biggest one being his FIP, right? His FIP right now in those 7 innings is sitting at 5.08, which indicates that there was probably a bit of luck involved with Chris Martin's ERA being so low, and the biggest reason for that is his strikeout rate. His strikeout rate is much lower than most people are used to seeing from Chris Martin. He only had 2 strikeouts in those 7 innings, which equates to a K per 9 of just 2.6, which is the lowest of his career up until this point. But again, you're talking about an extremely small sample size. Over his career, Chris Martin has been known as a strikeout guy and as a guy who walks virtually no one. So it's not a huge concern with Chris Martin yet because of how small the sample size is. It was just something people were starting to notice as he got going throughout the 2023 season. But regardless of the concerns, Chris Martin coming back into this bullpen is going to be huge for this Red Sox team. It adds a guy who can come in late innings. You know he's going to throw a lot of strikes and has experience bridging the gap between your sort of middle relievers and your closer. You can use in critical situations without being too fearful of what he's going to produce on the mound. And outside of him just being an individually reliant reliever, he's going to help this Red Sox bullpen when it comes to specified roles. And what I mean by this is taking a look at yesterday's game. You were up 6-1 going into the 7th inning, and you bring in Ryan Brasier because of injuries and because of how you have to structure your bullpen in the later innings of games. He ends up walking a bunch of guys. John Schreiber comes in, he gives up a little funky double, and all of a sudden this game is almost tied, right? If Chris Martin were in this Red Sox bullpen for that game, you're probably looking at someone else aside from Ryan Brasier coming into it. You're probably looking at either John Schreiber, Josh Winkowski, maybe even Cutter Crawford coming into that game and trying to bridge the gap between the 7th inning and the 8th inning possibly to get to that 9th inning. So Chris Martin coming back in not only helps this Red Sox team on the basis of him just being a reliable reliever, but he also helps this team in determining which roles to use which guys. Ryan Brasier can now go back to being that sort of mop up, we're winning by a ton or we're losing by a ton type pitcher. If he gives up 3-4 runs, it's not the end of the world, right? Whereas you can now use your higher leverage relievers, the guys we just mentioned, in more stressful situations to hopefully produce more wins for this Red Sox team. We're getting back to what this Red Sox bullpen was supposed to be relegated looking like at the beginning of the year. I also think the Red Sox made the right decision in optioning Ort as opposed to DFAing Ryan Brasier. The reasons for this is, one, you can keep Kaleb Ort on this Red Sox team, and although he has not been the best performer at the major league level, depth, especially in a bullpen type role, is extremely important as you play 162 games. We've seen it earlier this year, right? Injury bugs are going to happen. You're going to have periods on your team where multiple guys go down, and having depth within the Red Sox system to be able to replace those guys is huge. Now, obviously, the debate can be had as to how efficient Kaleb Ort's going to be replacing someone, but having a body in there to replace guys is always important. If you were to DFA Brasier, there was a really high chance that Ryan Brasier wouldn't have ended up on this Red Sox team and that someone would have claimed him off of waivers. So by optioning Ort as opposed to DFAing Brasier, you allow yourself to increase your depth in the minor league system. 2, if you take a look at both of their stats combined, Ryan Brasier does have a bit of a silver lining on his statistics when it comes to outside metrics. His FIP is lower, indicating that he's been a bit unlucky on the mound so far this year, and I know a lot of people are sick of and tired of hearing that Ryan Brasier's outlying statistics look good, because at some point you can have the best outlying statistics in the world, but if you're not getting the job done on the mound, you're not a good pitcher, right? But at the same time too, when you're comparing the 2 worst pitchers in the Red Sox bullpen, you got to go with the guy who's got a little bit of a silver lining. We also still have more pitchers coming back from the IL. You've got Joely, who should be back in the next couple of weeks. You've got Wyatt Mills, whose 60-day IL stints ends at the end of next month. So you've got other opportunities to shed Ryan Brasier from this Red Sox bullpen. So to me, Kaleb Ort going first does make more sense. Overall, I think this move makes perfect sense, right? I think everyone was expecting this move to happen at some point, the Kaleb Ort option down to AAA, and I think it makes sense for him to go first, and I'm just glad this Red Sox bullpen is starting to get back to what it was originally supposed to look like going into 2023. Let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think of this latest Red Sox roster move? What do you think about Chris Martin coming back into this bullpen? What do you think about Kaleb Ort exiting this bullpen? What do you think about the decision to option Ort as opposed to DFAing Brazier? Let me know all your thoughts on the latest Red Sox roster move in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.